We're going to be joined by Andy Byford. If we could just pop him up there on the screen so you can see him. There he is there. He's the CEO of Toronto Transit Commission. Perhaps the most well-travelled example of the skills that the London Transport Network develops internationally. He's been in Canada for almost 4 years, joining as Chief Operating Officer in 2011 before moving to his current post for just 2 years ago, being hired directly from Australia, where he was COO of Sydney's Rail Corporation. He started first in management post in London Underground, and then he was in charge of operations and commuter services within Southern and South Eastern Railways. We're going later in this session to be joined again by Howard Collins, but for now we're going to hear directly from Andy about the lessons that he's taken from the US on his travels and the lessons that he has learned there. And I'm reliably informed that after Andy does his presentation, we will actually be able to take questions and answers from the floor.
So, hi Kirsty, hi everyone. It's from sunny Toronto. It's nice to be today. Contrary, it's not always. Today's going to be 23 degrees, not quite as warm as the UK. But yeah, it's a hard decision for me to leave Australia. That was a great job, a great time down there. But the reason I left to come to Toronto were really two compelling reasons. One, I'm a railroad pilot, have been, as you said from my bio, from my introduction, that's what I've always done. And this is a very interesting property here at Toronto because it's multimodal. We have subway, we have buses, we have streetcars, trams in the UK, we have LRT, and we have a large paratrans organisation. So very good in terms of career development to actually get to know those other modes. But the compelling reason really was I wanted to be part of the team that transformed the TTC in the way that I'd say Mike Brown has done at the Tube and Rob now Howard have done and are doing in Sydney. And this is a great company, the TTC. But with somewhat old-fashioned, we still use tokens rather than a smart card. The whole feel of the company was somewhat stuck in the past. What was a fabulous system had been somewhat left to decline, really, because of a lack of funding and policy. So to me, this was a compelling opportunity, and it's certainly been an incredibly busy 3.5 years so far. So just a few stats. We move 1.8 million people a day on those 5 modes. It's the least subsidized transit in North America. We get 88 cents per ride. Contrast that with most US cities where they're $1.30, $1.50, even $2. So I actually think we work miracles for the money we've got. It's a hugely political environment, probably the most political place I've ever worked, which is saying something after the Tube and after, less so the TOTS, but certainly after Sydney, which had its challenges, and a very media-rich environment. So my background at the Tube and latterly the TOTS and then Railcorp really helped me prepare for this role. We've got 5 what I call mega projects underway, and I'll describe them in a second, but I think the most striking thing I felt when I got here was number 1. We'd lost sight of the basics, so trains went up and down all day with garbage on, the trackside walls were filthy, there were handwritten notices everywhere, so it was actually really fun to get stuck into straight away in 2012 when I was appointed as CEO. Job number 1 was to regain customers and stakeholders' confidence by an all-out, back-to-basics, quick wins program, and that's been pretty successful. So even basic things that are just bread and butter to UK operators like in-service litter picking, that just wasn't done here. It was done overnight, so the trains were filthy, so we've had a big cleanup. We've had a big push on customer information. There was no customer charter. There is now. We're into our 3rd iteration. There were no customer-facing KPIs, so we've got a series of KPIs that are presented daily, so they're transparent and they're available to the public, good or bad. We report on basic performance. Again, bread and butter to my UK colleagues in the room. But the most striking thing was there wasn't a corporate plan. I remember saying, as I took on even the coup role, can I please see the strategic plan? And everyone kind of scratched their heads. So we put a lot of work into developing a 5-year corporate plan. If anyone wants to see it, it's on the website at ttc.ca. So that plan sets out 7 strategic objectives, how we're going to modernize the TTC from top to bottom over the next 5 years, and that's basically modernizing the infrastructure, some of which was already underway. But if you want to be world-class, you've also got to modernize your processes so that they're customer-led, and also critically change the culture so that the customers feel valued. You're not world-class if you get to the end of the journey and people say, yeah, nice, shiny vehicle, same shoddy service. The 5 mega projects are number 1. We're completely renewing our streetcar fleet, and that's not just buying 204 state-of-the-art low-floor air-conditioned streetcars from Bombardier, so 204 new vehicles. You have to renew the overhead. We're building a new streetcar barn. We're building connection tracks. We're upgrading curbs and islands so that the ramp can deploy onto those islands and onto the street. And that's a big challenge. That's a $2 billion project. So that's project number 1. Add to that, we're also re-equipping our line 1, which has 1954 original signaling, 60-year-old signaling, fixed block signaling. That's being progressively replaced with ATC, automatic train control. So I've got a great team that are progressively working on that. We are taking best practice from the UK. It's not popular, but we are using line closures at weekends to expedite that work. So that's a huge project in itself. That will be done by 2019. Mega project number 3, we're building an 8.6 kilometre extension up to what's called York Region. That's 6 new stations, spectacular stations, I'd say akin to the Jubilee Line extension in London. And that has quite a lot of challenges, to say the least. Very political, crosses the boundary for the first time out of the city of Toronto. So lots of politics involved in that. I'd say some real challenges on managing too many contractors. I think there's huge lessons to be learned in terms of exposure to the company to risk to claims, which is an issue. We've already had to put the finish date back by 1 year because there's been all sorts of challenges faced with getting this thing open. Mega project number 4 is we are migrating to a smart card, so very similar to Oyster or to Octopus in Hong Kong. Oyster is our model, if you like, although we're not using Cubic. It's an Ontario-derived model. It's called Presto, and we are progressively equipping all 5 of our modes, and that will be completely done. The whole TTC will be fully equipped with a smart card. No more tokens, transfers, lineups, or tickets by the end of next year. And at that point, we'll also move our collectors out of the booths to be mobile customer service agents. So that in itself will be an industrial relations challenge. But that's the point, right? There's no point in having collectors if there's nothing to collect. And I'll certainly draw on my Tube experience on getting that negotiated through or consulted through. But the 5th mega project is, I'd say, the most difficult, the most challenging, but the most gratifying, and that is getting people to think, behave, and act differently. I want people to coin a phrase that was our mantra at Southern under Chris Birchall. I want my employees to think like a customer and to talk like a human being. So we are pushing all out on a big culture change that has to start with the change in management style, which I felt was Neanderthal when I got here. So we're doing lots of employee town halls. We've launched an employee charter. We've done an employee survey. We're having a huge push to get customers to feel valued through motivated staff. So that plus the daily grind of delivering service in a very critical environment. The Canadians don't hold back from giving their opinion. Some rather wacky politics, to say the least. You'll be aware of some of the politics from Toronto. It's a fabulous and compelling challenge. It certainly is 24/7. Certainly keeps me.
Just picking up on something you said about Mega Project 3. You said that you are working with a whole variety of small contractors, and that has proved problematic, and there are lessons to be learned from that. And that this is the first time you pushed out of Toronto boundary, and you've failed to deliver on time. You're having to push the project back by a year. That in itself must be not only disappointing for customers, but also in terms of morale for the company, that you haven't been able to deliver what you promised. And tell me, because look at what we were talking about, Crossrail works with lots of contractors, and what was the problem with using too many contractors?
Right. So, I mean, basically, this is the design, bid, build contract, and I have to say, going forward, I certainly want to go with design build. I don't want to have this situation that I inherited, where contractors pretty much bid low and then try to leverage additional monies through claims. I mean, the root cause of this was goes right back to 2009 when the project was originally set up. The TTC was ready to start construction, but there was an 18-month hiatus, 18-month hiatus during which the three financing partners could not get the finances in place. So guess what? That schedule was never elongated or prolonged by that same amount. It was compressed. I have to say, I wouldn't have signed off on that. I'd have said there's no way that you can just take 18 months out. So designs were rushed. There was a lot of toing and froing here about the actual type of stations to be built. The TTC wanted to make them fairly rudimentary because it won't be the busiest part of our network, certainly when that opens. But for various political reasons, much more glamorous stations were specified, and then that was felt to be too expensive. So once again, the designs were changed. Right. So I think, unfortunately, the roots of this, the seeds of this were sown a long time ago. There's definitely lessons to be learned.
Right, and the other thing is, you said there are 5 mega projects that you're working on. 2 things to ask. First of all, customer satisfaction. Do they understand how you're trying to transform the transport network within Toronto? Are you getting feedback on that?
Well, I pretty much get daily feedback. I ride the system every day. I've never owned a car in my life, and customers see me with the name badge on every day on the system, and so you do get daily feedback. I also, again, adopting best practice from the UK. I remember back to my tube days, we used to have a full page in the metro back there, and certainly in Sydney, Australia, Rob and his team had a page in the equivalent over there. We didn't have that in Toronto, so we now do. And I write an article that I personally write myself every week, every Friday. I write an article to keep customers updated with what we do. And also, we've had a big push. I felt there was a real siege mentality here when I got here, that it was almost as though the company wanted to just get through another day, keep your head down, only comment if you need to. So we've adopted a much more proactive approach to social media, but also to dealing with good news and bad news. You've got to own it, you've got to step up to it. So I'm out there talking to customers. We've introduced Meet the Manager sessions. Again, it's all good practice. I fundamentally changed my management team, actually. We've had a lot of people promoted from within, but also a lot of fresh blood brought in. It's a real change, actually. In fact, my union rep said to me the other day, one of my union presidents said to me, and he said it tongue-in-cheek, if we get any more British people turn up, we'll all be drinking tea at this rate.
Yeah, but I was wondering on that point of changing your whole management team, if they've all come from within the railways.
No, not all have. We also introduced another concept that my ex-colleagues at the Tube will be familiar with. I introduced a concept of group station management. The stations were woefully undermanaged. They only had, even on big stations, 1, 2, in some cases 3 people. There was just no way these stations were properly managed. And you know, having been the group station manager at King's Cross, I wanted to make damn sure that we were managing stations safely, and they're not getting any bigger, but they're getting way busier. Our customer numbers are going through the roof. We're up to nearly 540 million rides a year. Now, those group station managers, of the 6 that we appointed, 5 came from outside, 4 were women, which was, again, breaking the mold. 3 were from Air Canada. 1 was from Pearson Airport, 1 was from a railway background, but from Moscow, actually, and 1 was an internal candidate. So best person for the job, and I think sometimes it does pay to get a fresh perspective. And
finally, you talk about 5 mega projects. What is going to be the 6th?
Well, actually, we already have a 6th in the making. 1 is, and effectively almost the 7th. 1, we're now preparing to build a further extension, which is an eastward extension of our Line 2 out to Scarborough, and that will be a 3, possibly 4 station extension. But starting this Friday, we have the Pan Am Games being hosted here in Toronto. So that's the 3rd largest multi-sport, multi-country games in the world after Olympics and Commonwealth Games. And that's the excitement's really building here. So that in itself is a bit of a mega project, which is why I say it's 24/7, this job. It really is a very exciting place to be right now.